Hi guys, welcome back to another video of the Q2FY26 series. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the logistics sector, okay? And this sector, I think in a year we can do it only twice because many companies in this sector are small cap, and unka result aata hai in H1 and H2 only. And the other thing is, if you talk about this entire logistics space, right? When we saw this companies, same time last year, that is H1 of FY25 अगर हम देखते, so you will see everybody were bullish, everybody came out with very strong guidance, and if you see especially H1 of last year, it was really strong for them. But the same time you see H1 of this year, it's been a completely opposite story, right? And we will see what is happening here, because there are a couple of companies that are good, but there are the couple of other companies in the list that has to be a complete avoid, complete reject. Okay, so the four companies that we will be doing is SJ Logistics, Premier Roadlines, AVG Logistics and Tiger Logistics. Right off the bat, I will talk about first two companies, which is AVG and Tiger Logistics. I was talking, right, कि like अगर दो company you have to completely avoid in this sector, that would be AVG and Tiger Logistics. Okay, पहले बात करते हैं AVG Logistics का. As you know, I will just wrap up this video as quickly as possible because I do not want to go in depth with respect to with respect to the companies that are not doing really well. ठीक है, जो है वो है. I will talk about it. मुद्दे की बात ही करते हैं. AVG Logistics आप देख सकते हो. पहले तो बात इसका sales up is only up by 3% and PAT is flat. But if you remember the same time last year, this was that one company that came out with a very strong guidance कि like हम 750 crores, I think something in that range they would do, which was a 45% growth rate for the full year, 24 versus 25. But what we saw in after one quarter, that is after Q2, we saw that entire guidance that was there, it looked too far-fetched. Okay, फिर आके बोलते 750 नहीं शायद 700 करूंगा. Then you would see them in Q3 and Q4 also, right? They didn't match up to the guidance. Ultimately 45% का growth guidance was reduced to 25, was reduced to 30, 25, and then even that 25% became hard for them to achieve last year. Okay, and even if you see right now, even in this year in FY26, the quarters have not been strong. You can tell me that H2 is greater than H1, but looking at H1 का results that has been there, it's been a very lull year for AVG Logistics. ठीक है, अभी आप बोल सकते हो कि like यहाँ पे कि like हाँ उनको project नहीं मिला, वो नहीं मिला, everything is getting delayed and everything, but see, as a shareholder that is none of your concern, right? Because as a shareholder your only concern is भाई आपने जो बोला उसको execute करके दिखाना है. That's it, as simple as that. Other than that, that headache is management, not you as a shareholder. So over here, AVG Logistics right off the bat, sales is up by 3%, PAT is flat. But most importantly, उनका जो guidance दिया था last year, they seem to be failing on that miserably. And not just that, they've not been able to come up after that. Okay. The second is Tiger Logistics. Tiger Logistics का भी अगर आप देखते हो वही हालत है. Sales is up by 5.3%, PAT is up by 14.4. Interesting thing about Tiger Logistics is यहाँ पे you will see that the volumes has grown by like 30-35%. Okay, both their air volumes as well as their normal volumes, but this is not getting reflected in sales. So the fact that आपका volumes are really good and this it's the sales is just growing by single digit, it makes me question इनका जो value growth है, maybe the average order value that is there, right, that hasn't really been strong because maybe you are taking care of the small parcels, right, जिसके वजह से आपको volume मिल रहा है but आपका margins is going is a little bit of a miss over here, right? Maybe that's why the value growth of the component is not there, and maybe इसके वजह से sales hardly grew by 5.3%, that is there. And इसका मैंने last time का भी video में भी बोला था कि like Tiger Logistics, if you see in H1 they were growing by I think north of probably 100% or so, and that's something that even questioned then कि like is this growth sustainable? Because looking at the pathway that was there, the runway that was there, it was quite like quite it was like ये growth जो है whether it could be sustainable or not, वही एक बड़ा question mark था. And looking at again this H1 result, वो Tiger and AVG Logistics right off the bat horrible terrible companies and आप देख सकते हो right, the minute the pace of growth comes down, you have to cut, because look at the stocks, because I think same time last year Tiger was trading at somewhere 73-80 in that range, अभी भाई 36 में है, 50% of the value gone. I mean it's crazy. So now I hope you understand कि like आप जो भी कंपनी पकड़ो, it could be logistics, it could be somebody who's selling chappals, it could be somebody who's selling biscuits, it doesn't matter. When the pace of growth comes down now, it is all hell break loose. Okay, and you can think about it, 50% of the value gayab in like a year, less than a year also, to be frank. Then we have the other two companies that are worth looking for, that is SJ Logistics and Premier Roadlines. Okay, now SJ Logistics अगर आप देखते हो, good sales is up by 26.5, PAT is up by 42.5. अगर आप उसका PAT margin देखते हो, PAT margin also has increased, EBITDA margin also has increased from 14.2 to 18.2. Now yes, the pace of growth has come down for the business, that I will touch upon later. But if you see over here, right, they've got immense operating leverage because PAT जो है that grew by 45%. Even the margins, the EBITDA margins also has improved. If you look at the entire logistics space, there is nobody who's having as high EBITDA margins as SJ Logistics. And let me tell you one thing, I will, by the way, in the end of the video, I will link the playlist जो है logistics sector का मैं एक playlist link कर देती हूँ. I would want you to watch it so you get a complete idea and understand कि like यहाँ पे ये जो 18% जो PAT margin SJ Logistics दिखा रहा है, why it is an extremely good thing. I'll tell you, it's because this industry is very unorganized. Not just unorganized ना, इतना middleman है ना यहाँ पे, आपको कुछ बचता ही नहीं ultimately. Okay, very difficult to operate in this sector. इतना regulations है, इतना middleman players है ना, it becomes very difficult. So इसके बाद भी आप 18% का EBITDA margin करते हो, especially in an environment, because in FY26 there has been a lot of delays and irregularities and problems in the waterways. So in spite of this, is shipping का पूरा का पूरा में आपने 18% EBITDA margin दिया. I appreciate that part of this SJ Logistics. But why did their margins go up over here? Why did they get immense operating leverage? Because as you know, in the last year, right, in H1 of last year, they entered into this new part of the business called as NVOCC. Now ये NVOCC क्या होते हैं? I've already touched upon this earlier, but I will. And if you're somebody who knows from my previous video what NVOCC is, you can skip the next 3 minutes of the video. NVOCC का मतलब है नॉन वेसल ऑपरेटिंग कॉमन कैरियर. इसका मतलब क्या है? सो एज यू नो, अगर आप शिप में कुछ बेचते हो, देयर विल बी अ पर्सन हु ओन्स द शिप. ओके, नाउ इस शिप में व्हाट ही विल डू, ही विल आपका ये बड़े कंटेनर्स जाता है, राइट, दे विल, दिस कंटेनर कंपनीज दैट आर देयर, दे विल टेक द स्पेस. ओके, सो देयर इज अ पर्सन हु इज ऑपरेटिंग द शिप, जिसका शिप है, जो हु ओन्स द जहाज, that is the vessel operator. Then there will be somebody who's a container operator. Okay, so he will own this space, he will own this containers. Now if you are a SJ Logistics or if you're some other company who has to make sure that your logistics या आपको कुछ भी बेचना है from point A to point B, you have to own the container या lease a container, या उस बंदे से आपको पूछना पड़ेगा कि like bhai, can you please give me a part of that container so I can keep my stuff inside over here, and you have to lease the container. One thing is you have to figure out the route, talk to the authorities, get the regulatory approval and everything, but also at the same time what you have to do is you have to reserve this space. Okay, now earlier what SJ Logistics used to do was they used to operate via third party. एक third party से they would go, ये जो भी NVOCC है, they used to rent that या lease that space from them so they can send their parcels. अभी क्या कर रहे हैं, these people actually own, okay, इनका जो they have started owning a lot of containers, owning a lot of spaces over here, right? So not only that they don't have to rely on a third party, but also they can in case tomorrow आपका जो भी client है, even if you don't have to इनका एक advantage यहाँ पे और एक है, in case tomorrow even if your own client आपका ये container is not getting used, it is not getting occupied, आपका 75-80% occupancy नहीं है, you can also release or rent this out again एक और business बन सकते हैं where you give it out to somebody else. So because of this, right, ये NVOCC, since you're eliminating a middleman completely, right, and you're getting the container, you're getting the space, right, instead of going to a third party and operating via his container and his space, you are having your own stuff right now. इसके वजह से, because this new business is a little bit of a high margin compared to the old business such as ocean fleet and everything, इसके वजह से you will see इसका margin जो है बढ़ चुका है. But unfortunately with SJ Logistics, one thing you cannot deny is कि like इसका pace of growth कम हो रहा है, because it used to be a 100% growth engine earlier. Now you will see, right, I do not know because if they will touch 750 crore this year, maybe शायद 400 करोड़ अगर करेगा, I think 650-700 करोड़ का करेगा. Again very difficult to determine, right, because last time को कौन उन्होंने बोला था 25%, अभी बोल रहे हैं like looking at H2, I think we can do 35-40% in that range. Now you might come and argue with me कि like भाई इसका तो P is like 12-15 P, but I think time and time you have seen with lot of examples in the market that you could be a 12-15 ka P, you could be a 70 ka P also. Ultimately when pace of growth falls down, like it becomes a terrible thing for that stock. So iska bhi abhi ek aur, just the very good thing about them is operating leverage is intact, EBITDA margin is there, and management ne bhi wohi bola na ki like right now we want to focus on more profit margins, we want to make sure our bottom line is really good, right, and that is there. So all that is there, that is the good part. But थोड़ा सा ग्रोथ जो है वो टेपर हो चुका है, that is no denying. Now we do not know कि like what is the growth we can expect. Is it 650 crore, is it 750 crore, is it going to be, if it is a 750 crore it is a 50% growth engine, अगर वो 650 करता है then it is a 35 to 40% growth engine. So ultimately आप जो भी PE में दे दो ना, you cannot deny the fact कि like यहाँ पे इसका operating leverage is coming down, the growth is coming down, not operating leverage, the growth is coming down, right? Yes, since इनको इतना अच्छा operating leverage मिल रहा है, margins are increasing constantly, right, and everything, that can sustain the stock, but it needs that immense growth like how it used to be last time. The next company that we have is Premier Roadlines. I would say Premier Roadline is the only company actually who has been walking the talk. Okay, अगर आप FY25 का एंड में देखते हो, they had guided for this 35% kind of CAGR, but unfortunately थोड़ा उनका H2 में थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम आ गया था, that they were not able to do it. What was the issue over there? Simply that a lot of the orders that were there, which was supposed to happen let's say in the month of March, right, उसका billing जो हुआ, it happened in the month of April or so. Okay, इसके वजह से थोड़ा billing, see it's not that they have not completed the order or not. एक transportation industry में कैसा billing होता है is, let's say for example I have to send my एक kg का tomato that I have to send from point A to point B. Now until that tomato goes from point A, from the client's from the supplier's location to the client's location to point B, after that it reaches a point B, the client will check for the tomatoes, अरे सारा tomato ठीक है कि नहीं, खराब हुआ है कि नहीं. After that they will generate an invoice, they will send it to the bank, then the bank will pay you who is a logistics sector. This is how it goes. So until and unless they don't confirm, right, yes, this the tomato has reached my location, you cannot bill it. Although you have given the service, it becomes very hard, you cannot consider it in your billing. So अगर आप bill नहीं करते, आपका top line नहीं आते, so इसके issue के वजह से, since everything the billing got delayed over here, इसके वजह से you will see Premier Roadline को थोड़ा उस दिन 35% का guidance दिया था, but I think they missed it by hardly like 2-3 percentage points, that is there. Okay, but if you look at it, management ने वही बोला, they gave the confidence कि like no, we are sticking with this 35% CAGR. And if you look at it right now, if you look at the H1 का result has been very very stunning, right? Because if you look at the sales grew by 25%. Now you might be like, अरे guidance दिया 35 का and अभी sales कर रहे 25%, so pace of growth कम हो गया. Please don't do this mistake either, because when you talk about the entire logistics space, for these kind of companies, H2 is greater than H1. 70% आपका पूरा sale आता है H2 में, and only 30 to 40% of the sales happen in H1. So अगर वो बोल रहे पूरा साल में मैं 35% का growth target कर रहा हूँ, then think about it, right? उनका from FY25 का base से FY26 में they have to grow by 35%. अगर आप Premier Roadlines को देखते हो, then they should do somewhere between 35% बोला तो 380 to 400 करोड़ करना चाहिए. If you look at H1, in H1 they have done 150 crore, almost more than 30% of the guided revenues for 388 crore, that is there. So I believe उनका जो 35% का CAGR जो है, right, that will be easily achieved at least in this year, provided again ये billing का issue जो last time के जैसे हुआ था वो नहीं आता है. Again इनका अभी not just the top line is sustained for Premier Roadlines, unlike SJ Logistics, because Premier Roadline ने कहा अच्छा किया, they told they will do 35% का engine and they are continuing to do a 35% का engine. Unlike with SJ Logistics, it has been a little bit of a the pace of growth coming down has been a little bit of a bummer. But with Premier Roadlines you will see top line भी sustained है, and on top of it you can see उनका जो margins है, उनका जो operating leverage है, everything they've got. Just to give you a rough estimate, उनका PAT, that is a PAT grew by 38%. अगर आप उसका EBITDA margin देखते हो, EBITDA margin has gone from 7.5 to 9.3. Okay, now why over here you will see that the margins grew from 7.5 to 9.3? Why did they get an operating leverage? Again यहाँ पर भी एक business में change हो रहा है. Okay, again now compare this over here. EBITDA margin for Premier Roadlines is 9.3. EBITDA margin for SJ Logistics कितना है? 18%. Now do you understand what a beast SJ Logistics is? What good control that they have in their operations, right? Now you understand, क्योंकि SJ Logistics जो है वो shipping में operate करते हैं, and Premier Roadlines operates in roads. Shipping में और भी ज़्यादा problems होते हैं compared to roadway. So now you understand मैं उतना वहाँ पे emphasis क्यों कर रही थी कि like इनका margins बढ़ चुका है, margins over there. Okay. Now coming to Premier Roadlines को अगर आप देखते हो, they have 4 types of logistics. Okay. उनका एक प्रोजेक्ट लॉजिस्टिक्स है, कॉन्ट्रैक्टेड लॉजिस्टिक्स है, ओडीसी. ओके, बाय द वे प्लीज रेफर टू दिस प्लेलिस्ट. आई हैव कवर्ड एवरीथिंग ओवर हियर इन डिटेल. यहाँ पे मैं एक समरी छोड़ के बोल दूंगी, ठीक है. कॉन्ट्रैक्टेड लॉजिस्टिक्स में क्या होता है, यू वर्क विद द कंपनीज दैट इज देयर, उनका डेली जो शिपमेंट जाता है एंड एवरीथिंग, राइट, मे बी फ्रॉम पॉइंट ए टू पॉइंट बी. सिंस यू वर्किंग इन अ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ऑफ 2 to 3 months विद देम, और समटाइम्स इट कुड बी 6 months to a year ऑल्सो, राइट. यहाँ पे आपका मार्जिन नहीं उतना हाई नहीं है, ओके, बट यू हैव अ लॉट ऑफ मार्जिन. आपका जो मार्जिन है इट्स ग्रेटर देन 12% व्हेन यू टॉक अबाउट प्रोजेक्ट लॉजिस्टिक्स एंड ओडीसी. ओडीसी का मतलब है ओवर डायमेंशनल कार्गो. स्पेशली ओवर डायमेंशनल कार्गो में इट इज हाई मार्जिन business. Now again, who's doing ODC? Now you tell me, if you have tracked the entire logistics space, there is another company who's doing, working in this ODC. सिर्फ नाम अलग है. Which company said Blackbuck? Blackbuck is entering the superload business. You will see in Q2 of this year also Blackbuck, because Q2 is a very very lean period for logistics company. क्या होता है ना, इतना बारिश होता है, इसके वजह से all of the business operations gets disrupted. See, अगर आप ships में जाते हो, because of the terrible weather, a lot of ships don't go into water. Similarly, roads भी block होते हैं. So you understand how terrible Q2 is. So in spite of Q2 में आपका margins बढ़ चुका है. Why? Because of this ODC business. Now अभी क्या हुआ है, entire industries में, the entire cable and wire industry seeing a lot of boom. Okay, so इसके वजह से ये ODC जो है, over dimensional cargo जो है या project cargo जो है, यहाँ पे high margin business है. They have, they've got a lot of demand. ODC का मतलब क्या है, over dimensional cargo. Now let's say, think about it. If I have to transport 100 kg of tomato from point A to point B, it is easier. Okay, आप कैसे भी बेच सकते हो. But if I have to send, let's say, एक बड़ा एक windmill का वो जो एक blade होता है, I can't break it into small pieces and send. No, I have to send that entire windmill का सिर्फ एक ही blade भी हो, I have to send it as one particular, in one particular truck I have to send, right? You might see on the roadways, right, there will be this 16 wheels का एक बड़ा truck होता है, बड़ा shipment होता है, right? And इसके लिए special vehicle चाहिए, special permissions चाहिए, इसका routes भी sometimes are अलग. So this is called as your over dimensional cargo, where you have to send, where the cargo ka limits are more than your usual, whatever the required limits are. Not only that, you need special vehicles, special route for this. So ये जो ODC का business था, this was 3% earlier. Okay, now if you look at it, the ODC business and the project business that is there, it is contributing as of H1 50%. And last time they had mentioned like FY26 में they want to reach 75%, from ODC and project cargo. Already in H1 they have done 50%. Maybe in H2 they can do 75%, या next साल भी हो सकता है. But because यहाँ पे product mix change is happening, right? They're going from normal contracted logistics के, normal, आपको बेचना पड़ते कंपनी के साथ काम करते हो, उस कंपनी के पास अपना खुद का लॉजिस्टिक्स नहीं है, सो दे सोर्स इट टू थर्ड पार्टी कंपनीज लाइक प्रीमियर रोडलाइंस. यू गो फ्रॉम जस्ट बीइंग अ मियर थर्ड पार्टी ऑपरेटर फॉर सम कंपनीज, यू आर बीइंग अ स्पेशलाइज्ड एक सर्विस प्रोवाइड कर रहे हो, व्हिच इज ओवर डायमेंशनल कार्गो एंड प्रोजेक्ट लॉजिस्टिक्स. इसके वजह से आपका जो मार्जिन है, मार्जिन इज इंक्रीजिंग बिकॉज द प्रोडक्ट मिक्स इज चेंजिंग, राइट? रिमेंबर इन द इन्वेस्टमेंट चेकलिस्ट वी स्पोक अबाउट, whenever we see a product mix change happening for the good, right, that is, that is a good product mix change. So यहाँ पे वही हो रहा है, इसके वजह से आपका margins जो है it has gone up. Now the problem with this ODC is, the vehicles that is required, right, you need special vehicles. आपको 16 wheels का truck चाहिए and everything. It becomes very difficult, to source these trucks because इनका खुद का कुछ नहीं है. They usually do, they lease the trucks and everything, so they can be asset light. But now, since they are going more and more, अभी बोल रहे हैं कि like 75% of the top line will come from, this ODC and project logistics. These people have also started investing, in few axle trucks, and everything. ठीक है, ये भी कर रहा है वो. So all in all, great set of numbers, इनका Premier Roadlines का. Not only that, अगर आप देखते हो इनका जो number of orders है, number of order is up by 8%, but उनका average order value that is up by 15%. Again, why is this happening? Like I told you earlier, अगर आप ODC and over dimensional cargo and project cargo का H1 का mix देखते हो, I think in H1 it was contributing only 12%. Right now in this H1 it is contributing 50%, right? इसका margins are higher, order value is higher. Now you understand why AOV is up by 15%, but volume growth, is only up by 8%, because यहाँ पे you can do little less orders, but since it is more margin accretive, आपका value growth is more higher. So that is the thing. I would say Premier Roadlines में absolutely no problem. The management is walking the talk. Whatever they have promised, they have executed in H1. Looks like the rate at which it is going, in H2 also they should clock, whatever they have guided for. Okay. So all in all, Premier Roadlines is good. SJ Logistics, again, good business, fundamentally great business, great management. Until now the management का कुछ भी problem नहीं आ चुका है. There is no red flag that has been highlighted. from the management or anything. There also has been no problem. It's just that, again, with in terms of business, in the entire logistics space, they have the highest of the margin, great operating leverage. They want to focus more on the bottom line. Good for them, they are doing it. Only and only thing मुझे थोड़ा इसमें SJ Logistics में थोड़ा मेरे को खटकता है, you can tell, is the fact that the pace of growth is coming down, right? Like now it's a 35 to 40% का growth engine. आगे जाके शायद again in the next year, that is in FY27, who knows, maybe they might end up doing only 25%, 40 से 25% कर सकता है. I do not know, right? Like ये एक थोड़ा एक uncertainty है in terms of growth rate, pace of growth कम शायद और भी कम हो सकता है in the future. I do not know. ये थोड़ा एक uncertainty है which gives me a little bit of a, I would say a little bit of an anxiety. आप बोल सकते हो, एक आप बोल सकते हो anxiety, कोई भी word use कर लो, वो है. But out of these 4 companies, Premier Roadlines and SJ Logistics is worth looking for, is worth tracking, is worth reading about these companies. But the last 2 companies that is there, which is Tiger Logistics and AVG Logistics, complete avoid, complete reject. Especially AVG Logistics, it's absolutely khachra in the entire, like very very horrible shit company, I can tell, in the entire logistics space. Tiger Logistics again, I mean, one thing also you will see, Tiger and AVG Logistics, जब से उनका हालत बिगड़ चुका है, which is H2 of last year, they've stopped doing con calls, and that's kind of like like जब time अच्छा था, especially Tiger Logistics, because in Q1 and Q2 they've had, last year they've had really great set of numbers, and that time to aake chilla raha tha ki like, oh, con call mein everything is good, demand looks great. And now the tides have turned, there is no con call at all, and I don't like these kind of managements, right? I mean, jo bhi bolo, I understand with respect to shareholders, yes, they can come and grill you, but when you are a public listed company, irrespective of what happens, I believe you should come and like answer the shareholders, because a lot of people have put their money here, right? Like so many public mein aate ho, paisa lete ho, and public invests in you, and you're telling me that you can't do a con call. I think that's not good, right? Wahi hai. But yes, I would say AVG Logistics horrible, so is Tiger Logistics. SJ and Premier Roadlines, I would say best of the lot. So yeah, that's that, guys, with the logistics space. I hope you all had a great time listening to it, and yeah, that's that, and have a nice day. Bye.